The chains were cold against his wrists. Commander Elias Vance stood in the center of the massive chamber, surrounded by beings that looked at him like he was an insect waiting to be crushed. The Conclave of 12 Suns was the oldest court in the galaxy. It floated in space around a dying red star, and it was here that the greatest crimes were judged. Elias had never imagined he would stand here as the accused. The chamber was round and enormous. 12 platforms rose in a circle around him, each holding a judge from a different species. The Kethari were giant insects with clicking mandibles and cold compound eyes. The Seraphim floated like beings made of pure light, their forms shifting and beautiful. The Dracovi were massive reptiles covered in scales harder than steel, their yellow eyes burning with ancient pride. There were others too, species Elias had only read about in reports. All of them were old. All of them were powerful. And all of them hated humans. Humanity had joined the Galactic Covenant only 90 years ago. In a galaxy where some civilizations were millions of years old, humans were babies, newcomers, and most species did not trust newcomers. Commander Elias Vance of the Human Federation, the lead judge announced. She was Kethari, her voice a series of clicks translated by machines into words he could understand. You stand accused of the destruction of the Volanthi sacred moon of Sereth. 40,000 pilgrims died in the attack. How do you answer? Elias lifted his head. His uniform was torn. His face was bruised from the arrest. But his voice was steady. I am innocent, he said. My ship did not attack the moon. We tried to save it. Laughter echoed through the chamber. It came from the Volanthi delegation, seated in a special section reserved for victims. Their ambassador was a tall creature with 6 arms and skin that shifted colors with emotion. Right now, he was deep purple, the color of grief and anger. Lies, Ambassador Sirith hissed. We have sensor logs. We have witnesses. Your ship fired upon our sacred ground and murdered our people. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed footage from the day of the attack. Elias watched his own ship, the Perseverance, approaching the moon. He watched weapons fire streak through space. He watched the moon's surface explode in flames, but the footage was wrong. It had been edited, changed. That is not what happened, Elias said, his voice rising. We received a distress call from the moon. When we arrived, another ship was already attacking. A black ship with no identification. We engaged the attacker and drove them away, but we were too late. The damage was already done. Convenient, another judge said. This one was Dracovi, his scales a deep green. You claim there was another ship, yet no other ship appears in any record. Only yours. Because someone erased it, Elias insisted. Someone edited the footage. Someone is lying to this court. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The judges shouted for order. Ambassador Sirith rose from his seat, all 6 arms spread wide in a gesture of outrage. This is what humans do, Sirith declared. They lie. They cheat. They destroy. They have been part of our covenant for less than a century, and already they show their true nature. Violent, savage, unworthy of the stars. Elias felt the words like blows. He thought of his crew, still imprisoned on the station. He thought of his family back on Earth, watching the news and wondering if it was true. He thought of every human who would suffer because of this lie. I did not do this, he said quietly. But no one was listening anymore. The lead judge raised her clawed hand for silence. The chamber slowly grew quiet. The evidence is clear, she announced. The human vessel fired upon a sacred site and killed 40,000 innocent beings. Unless new evidence is presented, this court has no choice but to find the accused guilty. The punishment for such a crime is death. Elias closed his eyes. He had served humanity his entire life. He had fought pirates, negotiated peace treaties, and saved countless lives. And now he would die for a crime he did not commit, killed by aliens who'd already decided humans were guilty before the trial even began. Then something strange happened. A low hum filled the chamber. It started soft, almost too quiet to hear, but it grew louder with each passing second. The judges looked around in confusion. The Volante delegation froze. Even the guards seemed uncertain. At the center of the chamber, behind where Elias stood, there was a pedestal. On that pedestal sat a crystal, black as night, as large as a man, and older than any civilization in the room. It was called the Relic of Axiom. According to legend, it was created by the precursors, the mysterious beings who had seeded the galaxy with life millions of years ago. The relic had sat dormant for 10,000 years, a symbol of ancient power that no one truly understood. Now it was glowing. Cracks of golden light spread across the crystal's surface. The hum became a tone, pure and powerful, filling the chamber with sound that seemed to vibrate in Elias's very bones. The lead judge stumbled backward, her compound eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," she whispered. "The relic has not awakened since the last bearer walked these halls," another judge finished, his voice trembling. 10,000 years ago. The light grew brighter. It pulsed like a heartbeat, each pulse stronger than the last. The entire station seemed to shake. Then a voice spoke. It was not loud, but everyone heard it. It did not come from any speaker or translator. It simply appeared in their minds, ancient and powerful and impossible to ignore. A soul stands accused. A soul cries for truth. "I shall weigh what has been hidden." The golden light exploded outward from the relic. It swept across the chamber like a wave, passing through walls and bodies and machines. When it touched Elias, he gasped. He felt something reach inside him, not his body, but his mind, his memories, his very soul. And then the light changed direction. It wrapped around him like a blanket, warm and protective, and lifted him off the ground. The judges watched in stunned silence. Ambassador Sirith's purple skin turned pale gray, the Volante color of fear. The voice spoke again, echoing through the minds of everyone present. "This soul speaks truth, but another soul in this chamber wears a mask of lies." The light from the relic turned, slowly, deliberately, toward the Volante delegation, and for the first time since the trial began, Ambassador Sirith looked afraid. The golden light filled the chamber like sunrise breaking through darkness. Elias floated in its glow, his chain still locked around his wrists, but somehow feeling lighter than before. He could feel the relic's presence in his mind, ancient, vast, and completely beyond his understanding. All around him, the most powerful beings in the galaxy stood frozen in shock. The Cathari judges clicked their mandibles nervously. The Seraphine, those beautiful creatures of pure light, dimmed themselves as if bowing before something greater. Even the proud Dracovi warlords lowered their massive heads. They had all heard stories about the Relic of Axiom. They had all thought those stories were just legends. They were wrong. "What is happening?" one of the younger judges demanded. He was Torvachi, a species known for their logical minds and their disbelief in anything they could not measure. "The relic is just a crystal. It has no power. This must be some kind of trick." The ancient voice answered him directly, and the young judge fell silent immediately. "I am no trick, child of logic. I was created before your species learned to walk upright. I have watched civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. And I was made for one purpose, to find truth when lies threaten to destroy everything." The relic's light pulsed again, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images. They appeared in the air like ghosts, playing out scenes that only Elias had witnessed until now. His memories. Everyone watched as the memory images showed. The Perseverance receiving a distress signal. They saw Elias ordering his crew to respond immediately, even though they were supposed to be heading home after a long mission. They saw the ship arrive at the moon of Sereth and find horror already unfolding. A black vessel hung in space near the moon. It had no markings, no identification codes, nothing to show where it came from. And it was firing. Beam after beam of deadly energy struck the moon's surface, destroying temples and homes and shelters full of innocent pilgrims. All weapons, target that ship. The memory Elias shouted. Get between them and the moon. Now, the Perseverance opened fire. The black ship took several hits before turning away from the moon. For a moment, it seemed like they had won. But then the black ship launched one final weapon, a massive torpedo that streaked toward the moon's largest temple. The Perseverance tried to intercept it. They fired everything they had, but they were too slow, too far away. The torpedo struck the temple. The explosion killed thousands instantly. The black ship jumped into hyperspace and vanished. And the Perseverance was left alone, surrounded by debris and death, the only ship visible when rescue vessels finally arrived. The images faded. The chamber was completely silent. Elias felt tears on his cheeks. He had tried so hard to save them. He had failed. You see, the Relic's voice said, this soul carries guilt, but not the guilt of murder. It carries the guilt of one who tried to help and could not. This is a different burden. A heavier one, perhaps. But it is not a crime. Ambassador Sirith pushed forward, his 6 arms waving frantically. This proves nothing. The human could have created these false memories. Everyone knows humans are skilled at deception. Their minds are chaotic and untrustworthy. You speak of deception, the Relic replied, and its tone grew colder. Let us speak of yours. The golden light shifted. It pulled away from Elias and reached toward the Volanti delegation like a hand stretching across the chamber. Ambassador Sirith backed away, but there was nowhere to run. The light touched him, and he screamed, "No, you cannot. I am a diplomat. I have immunity. This is against all laws of the Covenant." "I am older than you, Covenant," the Relic said simply. "I am older than your species, and I answer to a higher law than any you have written." The light wrapped around Sirith completely. He thrashed and fought, but it was useless. And then his memories began to play in the air, just as Elias's had. But these memories told a very different story. The chamber watched as Sirith met in secret with other Volanti officials. They wore the robes of the government's inner circle. They spoke in hushed voices about humanity, about how quickly the humans were spreading, how many allies they were making, how dangerous they might become in another century. "They must be stopped," the memory Sirith said, "before they grow too powerful to contain." "How?" another official asked. "The humans have done nothing wrong. The Covenant has no reason to move against them." Sirith smiled, a cold, cruel expression that made his current self look even more monstrous. "Then we give them a reason. We give the Covenant a crime so terrible that no one will defend humanity. We make them monsters in the eyes of the galaxy." The memories continued. They showed Sirith ordering the construction of the black ship. They showed him selecting the moon of Sereth as the target, choosing it specifically because it was sacred, because the deaths there would cause maximum outrage. They showed him bribing technicians to edit the sensor logs, to erase any trace of the real attacker. And worst of all, they showed him receiving reports about the casualties and smiling. 40,000 dead, the memory Sirith said, reading from a datapad. "Perfect. This will be enough. The humans will burn for this." The images faded. The chamber remained silent, but now it was a different kind of silence. The silence of shock, of horror, of rage, barely contained. The Volanti delegation looked at their ambassador with wide eyes. Some of them, clearly, had not known. They looked sick, disgusted, betrayed. The Dracovi warlords rose to their full height, their scales bristling with fury. In their culture, killing your own people for political gain was the lowest form of cowardice. It was worse than murder. It was a betrayal of everything honorable. "You," one of them growled, pointing at Sirith with a clawed finger. "You are filth. You are less than filth." Sirith had fallen to his knees. His skin had turned gray, then white, colors of terror and despair. He could not speak. He could not move. He could only stare at the relic as it continued to glow above him. "The truth is revealed," the relic announced. "The accused is innocent. The accuser is guilty. But there is more." Elias looked up, confused. What more could there be? The relic's light returned to him. It circled around him slowly, examining him in a way that felt strange and intimate. He could feel it looking not at his body, but at something deeper, something he did not even know he had. "This soul," the relic said, and for the first time, there was something like wonder in its ancient voice. "This soul carries the mark." The golden light concentrated over Elias's chest. It grew brighter and brighter until he had to close his eyes. He felt heat, not painful, but intense. And then he felt something change inside him, like a door opening that had been locked his entire life. When he opened his eyes, he looked down at his chest. His uniform had burned away in a perfect circle over his heart. And there, glowing on his skin, was a symbol. It was made of golden light, complex and beautiful, with patterns that seemed to shift and move even as he watched. The eldest Kethari judge made a sound Elias had never heard before, something between a gasp and a prayer. Then she lowered herself to the ground, her ancient body bowing before him. "The bearer," she whispered. "After 10,000 years, the relic has chosen a new bearer of justice." One by one, the other judges followed. They bowed not to Elias the human, but to what he had become. Something new, something ancient, something the galaxy had almost forgotten. And Elias stood in chains, a glowing mark on his chest, wondering what his life had just turned into. The chamber had descended into chaos. Voices shouted in a dozen different languages. Translators struggled to keep up. Guards moved toward the Volanthi delegation, their weapons drawn. Ambassador Sirith remained on his knees, his gray skin now almost white with terror. But Elias heard none of it. He stared at the mark on his chest, watching it pulse with soft golden light. It felt warm against his skin, like sunlight on a summer day. But it also felt heavy, heavier than anything he had ever carried. He could sense something vast connected to it, something that stretched across the galaxy and perhaps beyond. "What is happening to me?" he whispered. The relic answered him, its voice now speaking directly into his mind so that only he could hear. "You have been chosen, child of Earth. The bearer of justice is a sacred duty. When great wrongs threaten the balance of the galaxy, the bearer is called to act. You cannot be deceived while serving this purpose. You cannot be harmed while pursuing truth. And you cannot rest until balance is restored." Elias shook his head slowly. "I am just a soldier, a diplomat. I am nothing special. That is exactly why you were chosen." Before Elias could respond, a Kethari guard approached and removed his chains. His wrists were red and raw, but he barely noticed. The guard bowed deeply before stepping away, unable to meet his eyes. The eldest judge rose from her bow and addressed the chamber. Her voice was shaking, something Elias suspected did not happen often. "The relic has spoken. Commander Elias Vance is declared innocent of all charges. Furthermore, he has been marked as the bearer of justice, a title that has not existed for 10,000 years. She paused, clicking her mandibles nervously. The court must now decide what to do with the true criminal. All eyes turned to Ambassador Syrith. The Volanthi was trying to stand, but his legs would not support him. Two of his own delegates stood apart from him, their faces showing disgust and betrayal. They had not known. The conspiracy had been kept secret even from most of the Volanti government. "This is not possible," Cirrus said, his voice cracking. "The relic is a myth, a fairy tale. These memories could be fabricated. The human must have corrupted it somehow." "Silence," one of the Dracovi warlords growled. He stepped down from his platform, his massive body making the floor shake with each step. "You murdered your own people. 40,000 innocent lives, children, families, pilgrims who sought only peace. And you did it for politics, for power, for fear of a species that has done nothing to you." Cirith pointed at Elias with a trembling arm. "Humans are dangerous. They spread like a disease. In another century, they will dominate this galaxy. I was protecting our people." "You were protecting yourself," another judge said. She was Seraphine, her light form flickering with anger. "The relic showed us your memories, Ambassador. We saw your smile when you learned how many had died. You felt no guilt, no remorse, only satisfaction that your plan had worked." Cirith had no answer. He looked around the chamber, searching for allies, but found none. Even the other Volanti would not meet his eyes. Elias watched all of this in silence. The mark on his chest pulsed steadily, and with each pulse, he felt something strange, a sense of clarity he had never experienced before. He could look at Cirith and see not just a criminal, but the full weight of his crimes. He could feel the echoes of 40,000 souls crying out for justice. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. And somehow, it also felt right. What should be done with him? The eldest judge asked. She was looking at Elias now, waiting for his answer. "Bearer, the relic has chosen you as its voice. The punishment is yours to declare." Elias blinked. "May? I have no authority here. I am not even a citizen of your covenant." "You hold the highest authority in this galaxy," the judge replied. "The bearer of justice speaks for the precursors themselves. Your word is law in this matter." Elias looked at Cirith. The ambassador stared back at him with wide, terrified eyes. He was waiting for death. He expected death. Part of him probably wanted death. It would be simpler than facing what he had done. But something inside Elias rejected that idea. The mark on his chest grew warmer, and he understood what justice truly required. "Death is too easy," he said quietly. The chamber fell completely silent. "You killed 40,000 people. Their families will grieve forever. Their communities will never recover. And you want me to give you a quick end? A simple punishment that lets you escape the consequences of what you have done?" He walked towards Cirith, and the ambassador scrambled backward until he hit the wall. "I have seen your memories," Elias continued. "The relic showed me everything. This was not your first crime. You have done this before. Smaller massacres, blamed on other species. You have built your career on the bodies of innocents." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even the judges looked shocked. "Is this true?" The Dracovi warlord demanded. Elias nodded. "There was a mining colony on Vex 7, blamed on the Torvaki. A research station near the Seraphine border, blamed on the Cathari. Cirith has been playing this game for decades, starting conflicts to strengthen his own position. The reactions were immediate and violent. The Torvaki judge slammed his fist against his platform. The Seraphine flared with blinding light. The Cathari clicked their mandibles in fury. Cirith looked around wildly. "Lies! All lies! The human is manipulating you." "The relic cannot lie," Elias said simply. "And neither can I, not anymore." He turned to face the full court. "Here is my judgment. Ambassador Cirith will not be executed. He will be returned to his homeworld, and the relic's light will go with him." He raised his hand, and the mark on his chest flared. Golden light poured from his palm and struck Cirith in the chest. The ambassador screamed as the light burned into him, leaving a mark of its own. Not the symbol of the bearer, but something darker. A brand of shame that pulsed with sickly gray light. That mark cannot be removed, Elias said. It cannot be hidden. Every Volanthi who sees it will know what you have done. Your memories will play in their minds. They will see your crimes. They will feel the terror of your victims. You will live the rest of your life as a monument to your own evil. Cirith stared at the mark on his chest, his face twisted with horror. No, please. Kill me instead, please. You do not get to choose your punishment, Elias said. The dead chose it for you. Every pilgrim you murdered. Every family you destroyed. They want you to live, Ambassador. They want you to suffer. And so you will. He turned away from the broken ambassador and faced the judges. The Volanthi people are not guilty of these crimes. Only their corrupt leaders. I asked this court to help them build something better. A government that serves its people instead of sacrificing them. The eldest judge bowed her head. It will be done, Bear. The Covenant will send aid and observers to help the Volanthi transition to new leadership. Elias nodded. The mark on his chest was still warm, but the terrible clarity was fading slightly. The immediate crisis was over. Justice had been served, but as he looked around the chamber, at the bowing judges, the terrified delegates, the broken ambassador, he realized something that made his heart sink. This was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of injustice, full of hidden crimes and ancient wrongs. And now he was responsible for all of it. The bearer of justice had awakened, and his work had just begun. 3 days had passed since the trial, but Elias had not slept for more than a few hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt them. Millions of voices across the galaxy, crying out for justice. Some were loud and desperate. Others were quiet whispers, old wounds that had never healed. The mark on his chest pulsed constantly, connecting him to suffering he had never known existed. He sat alone in the quarters they had given him on the station. The room was large and beautiful, decorated with art from a dozen different worlds. It was meant for honored guests, for important diplomats and visiting leaders. Elias felt like a stranger in it. A knock came at the door. He did not look up, enter. The door slid open, and Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka walked in. She was his first officer on the Perseverance, and she had been released from imprisonment along with the rest of his crew after the truth came out. Her face showed concern as she looked at him. "Commander," she said carefully, "you look terrible." Elias laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Always honest." Tanaka sat down across from him. "The crew is worried about you. We all are." "What happened in that chamber?" She shook her head. "None of us know how to process it." "Neither do I," Elias admitted. He looked down at his hands. They looked the same as always, rough from years of military service, scarred from old battles. But they felt different now. They felt like they belonged to someone else. "The judges have been sending requests," Tanaka continued. "Messages from all over the galaxy. People want to meet you. Some want your help. Others want to study you. A few want to kill you, I think, though they did not say it directly." "I know," Elias said. "I can feel them. All of them." He tapped his chest, where the mark glowed softly through his shirt. "This thing connects me to something bigger than I can understand. It is like standing in a river and feeling every drop of water at once." Tanaka was quiet for a moment. "What will you do?" Before Elias could answer, a new voice spoke from the doorway. "He will do what the bearer has always done. He will answer the call." They both turned. Standing at the entrance was an old Kithari, the eldest judge from the trial. Her carapace was dull with age, and she moved slowly, but her compound eyes were sharp and bright. "May I enter?" she asked. Elias nodded. "Of course." The old judge moved into the room and settled her large body onto a specially designed seat. She studied Elias with an expression he could not read. "I am called Vethkira," she said. "I have served this court for 300 years. I never thought I would see the relic awaken in my lifetime. I certainly never thought it would choose a human." "That makes two of us," Elias said quietly. Vethkira made a clicking sound that might have been a laugh. "You are handling this better than most would." The last bearer, 10,000 years ago, was a seraphim named Luminax. When the relic chose them, they refused the calling for nearly a decade. They could not accept the burden. What changed their mind? "A war," Vethkira said. "A great war that threatened to destroy half the galaxy." Luminax finally accepted the mark and ended the conflict in a single year. They revealed the truth behind the war, that both sides had been manipulated by a hidden enemy. They united former foes against the real threat. She paused, and then they disappeared. No one knows what happened to them. The relic went dormant, and the bearer was never seen again. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. "Is that my future? To serve until I am used up, and then vanish?" "I do not know," Vethkira admitted. "The relic does not explain its choices. It simply acts when the galaxy needs balance. And it has chosen you, Commander. A human. A member of the youngest species in the Covenant." "Why?" Elias asked. It was the question that had haunted him since the trial. "Why me? Why a human? There are billions of beings in this galaxy who are smarter, older, more experienced than I am." Vethkira was silent for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, her ancient eyes fixed on his. "I have a theory," she said. "Would you like to hear it?" Elias nodded. "The relic does not choose the most powerful or the most intelligent. It chooses those with the right kind of soul. Those who see injustice and cannot look away. Those who help strangers, even when it costs them everything." She gestured toward Tanaka. "Your first officer told me about the distress call. You were on your way home after a long mission. Your crew was tired. You had no obligation to respond. But you did anyway. Anyone would have done the same," Elias said. "No," Vethkira replied firmly. "They would not. Most would have reported the call and continued on their way. They would have told themselves that someone else would handle it, that it was not their responsibility." She clicked her mandibles. "Humans have a strange quality. You are young and often foolish. You make terrible mistakes. But you also have something that older species have lost, a stubborn refusal to accept that suffering is normal. You see pain and you try to fix it, even when fixing it is impossible." Tanaka spoke up. "Commander Vance has always been like that. He once risked his entire career to save a transport full of refugees that our government wanted to ignore. He said he could not sleep knowing he had done nothing." Vethkira nodded. "That is why the relic chose you, Commander. Not because humans are better than other species, but because you have not yet learned to be cynical. You have not yet accepted that injustice is simply how the universe works. And that makes you exactly what the galaxy needs right now." Elias sat with her words for a long time. The mark on his chest pulsed steadily, and he could feel the distant cries for help growing clearer. There were so many, too many. He could spend 1,000 lifetimes and never answer them all. But he could start. He could try. "What happens now?" he asked. Vethkira stood slowly. "That is your choice, bearer. The relic gives you power and purpose, but it does not command you. You must decide how to use this gift." She moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. "But I will tell you this. The galaxy is watching. What you do next will shape how every species sees humanity for generations to come. You can prove that the relic chose wisely. Or you can prove that Ambassador Sirith was right about your kind. She left without another word. Elias sat in silence. Tanaka watched him carefully. "Commander?" she said finally. "What are you thinking?" Elias stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Billions of points of light. Each one a sun with its own worlds, its own civilizations, its own injustices. "I am thinking," he said slowly, "that I did not ask for this. I do not want this power. I am scared of what it means and what it will cost me." He turned to face her. "But the relic chose me anyway. And those voices I hear, those cries for help, they are real. Real people suffering real injustice. And I cannot ignore them. I cannot look away and tell myself it is not my problem." He took a deep breath. "Prepare the perseverance, Lieutenant. We have work to do." Tanaka smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her in days. "Yes, Commander." "Where are we going?" Elias closed his eyes and listened to the mark. Among the millions of voices, one called out clearer than the others. A small colony on the edge of known space. A powerful corporation exploiting the workers there. People dying in mines while their families starved. "There is a colony called Nexus 9, he said. "Something is very wrong there. That is where we start." Tanaka nodded and left to carry out his orders. Elias remained at the window, watching the stars. The mark on his chest glowed brighter than before, as if approving of his choice. The bearer of justice was ready to begin his mission, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since the trial at the Conclave of 12 Suns. In that time, Elias Vance had traveled to 19 different worlds and delivered justice to each one. He had exposed corrupt governors and criminal syndicates. He had freed slaves and stopped wars. He had faced the most powerful beings in the galaxy and forced them to answer for their crimes. And with each mission, his legend grew. The Perseverance dropped out of hyperspace above Earth. Elias stood on the bridge, watching his homeworld grow larger in the viewscreen. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in familiar patterns. He had not seen it in over a year. "Commander," Tanaka said from her station, "we are receiving thousands of messages. The whole planet knows you are coming." Elias nodded. "I expected that." Earth had changed since trial. Humans everywhere had watched the footage of the Relic awakening and choosing one of their own. They had seen the truth about the Volanthi conspiracy. They had watched their species transform from accused criminals to holders of the highest honor in the galaxy. For many humans, Elias had become a hero, a symbol of everything humanity could achieve. His face appeared on screens and posters across dozens of colony worlds. Children played games where they pretended to be the bearer of justice. For others, he had become something more complicated. A reminder that the galaxy was watching. A challenge to do better, to be worthy of the legacy he carried. And for some, the powerful, the corrupt, the cruel, he had become something to fear. "Take us into orbit," Elias ordered. "I need to address the United Earth Council." The ship moved into position, and Elias made his way to the communication center. The message he was about to send would reach every human settlement in the galaxy. He had thought carefully about what to say. When the transmission began, he was standing alone in front of a simple gray background. No flags, no symbols, no decorations. Just a man with a glowing mark on his chest and the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. "My name is Elias Vance," he began. 6 months ago, I stood accused of a terrible crime. The galaxy thought humanity was guilty. They thought we were violent, savage, unworthy of the stars." He paused. "They were wrong about me. But the question they asked was still important. What kind of species are we? What will we become as we grow and spread across the galaxy? Will we prove our critics right, or will we show them something they never expected?" He touched the mark on his chest. The relic of Axiom chose me for a reason. Not because I am the strongest or the smartest. Not because humans are better than other species. It chose me because of a simple decision. When I heard a call for help, I answered. Even though I was tired. Even though it was dangerous. Even though I had every excuse to ignore it. That choice is the only thing that matters. That is what defines us as individuals and as a species. Not our technology or our power, but the choices we make when no one is watching. The help we give when no one would blame us for walking away. He looked directly into the camera. I have seen terrible things in these 6 months. Injustice that has lasted for centuries. Suffering that the galaxy has simply accepted as normal. And I have also seen hope. Beings who fight against the darkness, even when they have nothing. Who refuse to give up, even when the odds are impossible. Humanity is new to this galaxy. We have so much to learn. But we also have something to offer. A fresh perspective, a stubborn refusal to accept that things cannot change. The older species have forgotten what justice looks like. They have made peace with corruption and cruelty. We have not. Not yet. I am asking you to help me keep it that way. Every choice matters. Every act of kindness creates ripples. Every time you help a stranger, you prove that the relic chose correctly. Every time you stand up to injustice, no matter how small, you represent our entire species. I cannot be everywhere. I cannot fix everything. But if all of us, every human across every world, commit to making just one choice that matters, we can change the galaxy. He smiled slightly. They called us criminals. We became the bearers of justice. They underestimated us. Let us show them how wrong they were. The transmission ended. Ilias stood in silence for a moment, then returned to the bridge. Tanaka was waiting for him. Her eyes were bright with emotion. That was beautiful, Commander. It was honest, Elias replied. I meant every word. What happens now? Elias walked to the main view screen and looked out at Earth. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were watching, thinking, deciding what kind of future they wanted to build. Now, he said, we get back to work. As if in response, the mark on his chest pulsed. A new voice reached him across the vast distances of space, a cry for help from a colony on the other side of the galaxy. Something was happening there. Something unjust. Something that needed to be stopped. Elias closed his eyes and listened. The voice belonged to a child, a young girl whose family had been taken by raiders. She was alone and afraid, hiding in darkness, praying for someone to help her. Set a course for the outer reaches, Elias ordered. Maximum speed. Yes, Commander, Tanaka replied without hesitation. The crew moved to their stations, and the Perseverance began to turn away from Earth. As the ship accelerated toward the stars, Ilias thought about everything that had happened since his trial. He thought about the fear he had felt standing in chains, believing he was going to die for a crime he did not commit. He thought about the shock of the relic's awakening, the burning sensation as the mark appeared on his chest. He thought about Ambassador Sirith, now living on his homeworld as a marked outcast, forever branded with his crimes. He thought about the Volanti people, struggling to rebuild their government without the corruption that had poisoned it for so long. And he thought about the future, a galaxy slowly changing, learning that justice was not just a word, but a force that could not be ignored. Learning that humans, those young and foolish newcomers, were the ones who had reminded them what it meant. The Perseverance jumped into hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the ship hurtled toward its destination. In his quarters later that night, Elias finally allowed himself to rest. The mark on his chest still glowed, still connected him to the cries of the suffering. But he had learned to quiet the noise enough to sleep. Before he closed his eyes, he thought about what Vethkira had told him, that the last bearer had disappeared after completing their mission. He wondered if that would be his fate too. He wondered if there would come a day when the galaxy no longer needed him. But that day was not today. Today, there was a child waiting for rescue. Today, there were wrongs to be righted and truths to be revealed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new enemies, new injustices that demanded attention, and Elias would face them all. Not because he was special or powerful, but because he had made a choice, the same choice that had started everything. The choice to answer when someone called for help. He smiled in the darkness of his quarters. The galaxy had declared humanity guilty. The Relic had declared them worthy. And now Elias Vance, the bearer of justice, would spend the rest of his life proving that the Relic was right. One choice at a time, one soul at a time, until justice was no longer a legend, but a reality that every being in the galaxy could feel. The Perseverance flew on through the endless night, carrying its human crew toward the next mission, the next challenge, the next chance to make the universe a little bit better than it was before. And somewhere, in the ancient halls of the Conclave of 12 Suns, the Relic of Axiom pulsed with golden light, watching, waiting, and hoping that it had finally chosen the right species to carry its burden. It had waited 10,000 years for this moment. It was not disappointed.